private chat as well.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, everybody. Hey, welcome to the green room of DisrupTV. And of course, I'm here with my amazing co-host, co-founder, Vala Afshar, our great producer, Elle, and of course, we've got some good guests. So we're going to introduce our guests in traditional reverse order. We'll start off with none other than Jon Reed. Jon, where are you coming in from? What the heck are we talking about today?
Well, I'm in my Las Vegas residency. We're going to try to deconstruct event season, maybe puncture some AI agent hype balloons, and I'm going to ask the two of you how we can remain indispensable in the age of the machines and AI. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, wow.
Darn, we don't have an answer for you, but we will find out more. So let's go to Dave and Mark. Mark, go ahead. Where are you coming in from? We'll go to Dave. So.
Great to be here from LA. I'm Mark Abraham from BCG, lead our personalization business and author of Personalized, Customer Strategy in the Age of AI. So super excited to talk about how we drive growth with AI.
And I'm Dave Edelman, Mark's co-author of Personalized. I do advisory work. I teach at Harvard Business School. And not only are we here to talk about growth through personalization, but also how you compete by proving to people you're using their information in an appropriate way that they just love. But also how you
That's awesome. Terence, where are you coming in from? What are we talking about?
Hey guys, I'm in Manhattan. I'm the founder of Hat Future Lab, MIT entrepreneur mentor, and the author of a new book, The Upside of Disruption. And I help leaders to navigate some big catalytic questions. How do you turn disruption into a tailwind for laser-like focus and strategic courage? What's the sweet spot between strategy, profitability, and sustainability? How do you turn mega trends such as AI into milestones?
Very cool. We're going to have an amazing show. I'm going to turn it back to Elle for the count. All right, Elle, all you.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on X at DisrupTV Show. Send Ray, myself, our distinguished guest, your questions live, and we'll do our best to answer them. It is my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wang. He's the CEO, founder of Constellation Research. He is the best-selling author of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Ray is on television every day. He's on Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, Bloomberg. I just saw him on CNBC with the anchors in New York. He's one of the top futurists to follow on X at RWNG0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm here with Vala Afshar, the Chief Digital Evangelist for Salesforce. He's also the author of multiple books, including Boundless, a new mindset for unlimited business success, and a #1 seller on Amazon. But executives around the world pay attention to every one of his inspirational and insightful tweets. And if you don't follow him, please do. He's probably almost at 1 million on Twitter. But when he's not hosting, keynoting, or leading events at Salesforce, you can find him speaking on business TV outlets such as Bloomberg and posting insightful analyses on ZDNet. And of course, you can see him at Salesforce events all the time. So, but it's not about us. We always have fabulous guests. And I think, Vala, you said we're up to a good number of guests. And of course, we have a very, very special one to kick it off.
We have a guest here who's going to surely expand our minds. Terence Mauri is the founder of Hat Future Lab, Future Insights think tank. He's also a best-selling author, one of the most requested keynote headliners in leadership offsite speakers. Terence is author of a new book, The Upside of Disruption, The Path to Leading and Thriving in the Unknown. Terence has been described as an influential and outspoken thinker on the future of leadership by Thinkers 50. Terence's uplifting and deeply human keynotes sharpen the future readiness muscles and are equivalent to a double espresso to meet the future with boldness. Terence is a visiting professor at some of the world's leading business schools and is a Global Insights Panel Advisor and Entrepreneur Mentor at MIT. Terence reminds us, I love this reminder, we always overestimate the risk of trying something new and underestimate the risk of standing still. You can follow Terence on Twitter at TerenceMauri. Terence Mauri. Welcome, Terence, to DisrupTV.
Thank you so much, Vala, for the generous introduction, and good to see you, Ray, as well. Very excited to be here. In fact, I want to go beyond the double espresso, and let's do the equivalent of a spiced pumpkin latte.
I love that. That's definitely my favorite flavor at this time of year, for sure.
He's going for single origin, well roasted, crafted. Well, I'm just kidding. But anyways, coffee is coffee. And of course, coffee doesn't change as much. But leaders are facing tons of changes, especially emerging technologies like AI. But there's a weird challenge, right? There's a weird resistance going on. And you're chronicling this. You're capturing what's happening. So why are leaders facing this much resistance when we've got such a disruptive, exponential technology?
It's such an important question. In fact, it's a catalytic question, a question that doesn't just make us feel good, but makes us think hard. And look, you know, the Nobel laureate Herbert Simon said, too much information leads to a poverty of attention. We've heard of ultra-processed food. What about ultra-processed content, ultra-processed information? We're drowning in data, drowning in meetings, drowning in information. And that we pay this cognitive tax, a leadership tax. That means we have less bandwidth to focus on creating the future, future readiness, innovation, and change. There's even a new word for this, guys, meta-anxiety, which means anxiety about anxiety.
That's amazing.
Can you imagine that? Anxiety about anxiety? Double check.
That's almost square. I mentioned how you remind people of the importance of being bold and having audacious goals, purpose, vision. Why do you believe people overestimate the risk of bold decisions and ultimately underestimate their potential upside?
I think we're hardwired from an early age. All that courage, all that risk-taking, all that boldness is squeezed out of us like a lemon. By the time we leave college and university, it's pretty much gone. And it reminds me of this thinking that we always, at the end of our lives, whether that's 80 years or hopefully 100 years, we always regret inaction more than action. One of the number one regrets in business and in our personal lives is a lack of courage and a lack of boldness. It reminds me of I had an encounter with Jesse Armstrong, the chief writer of Succession. And he's got this sort of motto: start before you're ready, or don't start at all. And I think in this age of volatility, where today is the slowest it will ever be in a lifetime, today is the slowest that AI will be and agentic skills will be, well, actually not taking a risk is a risk.
And Terence, do you believe you can teach courage and boldness? Is that something some coaches will tell you can't teach speed? Although I have seen individuals, athletes improve due to coaching their speed. Do you think you can teach courageous thinking and creativity and boldness?
I think it's this complex alchemy of inspiration and action and context. And I think one of the big challenges of this sort of 21st century is that the future's not just about technology or trends. That's just one half of the narrative. The future is also about mindsets and choices. So I'll give you an example of that. Unlearning. So it reminds me of the Alvin Toffler, the futurist. He said the 21st century will be won by those who can learn, unlearn, and relearn. And so helping students and leaders of tomorrow understand this collective blind spot in society, that we have this brain bias against subtraction, against reductionism, against letting go of old ways of thinking, old assumptions that have gone off like yogurt in the fridge. So I think there is a percentage that can be taught, but there's a percentage of real world application as well. And it's that alchemy that I'm interested in catalyzing around the world.
You know, that's very interesting, right? And that subtraction, the unlearning is really hard when it comes to risk. We've been taught to avoid risk. We've been taught to mitigate risk. Leaders have been there to actually guide and work in a way so that they don't take risks. And so how do you do that? Especially you're standing still, which is the greatest risk of all, because people actually have a bias for doing nothing versus a bias for action.
And it's so true at an anthropological level. And by the way, I think in this age of acceleration and AI, another blind spot that we're missing is the ologies: sociology, psychology, anthropology, even agnotology, which is the study of cultural blind spots. And as as somebody once said, we are blind to our own blindness. Daniel Kahneman, we're blind to our own blindness. So I think, just to take some framing here, we've moved from the industrial age to this cognitive age. It's no longer just about return on investment. It's about return on intelligence, return on imagination. If you think about it, everything starts as an act of disruption, an act of imagination, an act of courage. Whether it's Salesforce, whether it's Constellation, whether it's Microsoft, it started as an act of imagination. But to sustain vitality for the long term, we're all interested in that. You also have to practice reimagination. That's the curiosity to learn, but also this courage to unlearn, the clarity to focus, and the conviction to decide. And so an example would be, we need to move from not just KPIs that often measure the wrong behaviors and punish risk-taking, to KBIs, key behavior indicators. What are the mindsets, the behaviors, the habits collectively that actually move the dial on boldness? Just imagine a KBI that rewards smart boldness in the organization, key behavior indicators. So these are some examples. We need to move from preservers of the status quo to challengers of the status quo, from Homo sapien to techno sapien, and you're going to like this, guys, I've been preparing this for you, from cold AI to warm AI.
Okay, there we go. We're getting rid of the general counsel now.
Please expand on that. What is the temperature?
Thank you, Vala. So in my new book, The Upside of Disruption, I write that around the world right now, in the C-suite, at the C-stat level, I'm seeing a lot of asset allocation, CapEx going towards cold AI. And what cold AI is profit maximization, often at the expense of truth, transparency, trust, even human well-being. Cold AI is a machine-first future that might diminish what makes us more human. We have to be careful about that. It's efficiency first, and we know that's important, but if it comes at the expense of loneliness and well-being, I've got a problem with that. Warm AI is the opposite. It's humanity first, enabled by AI. We have to avoid what Esther Perel, the psychotherapist, calls artificial idiocy or artificial intimacy, this play on AI. And actually, I would go as far to say that we need to move from Gen AI to specific AI. Let's get specific about this. So warm AI, cold AI, I'd like everybody watching us today to really take an audit, look at what they're doing, because the truth is right now out there, I'm seeing a lot of money being invested in cold AI, cold technology, and not warm AI.
Terence, we agree. We actually interviewed the CEO of Sam's Club, and he said he got rid of 100 million tasks. But then he said something I wasn't expecting. He said the warm AI point, we added 3% more workers on the front line so that we could have better human interaction, which is not what you were expecting out of that. Yes. And so we ask people all the time, instead of where do you automate, when and where do you insert a human in the process? And that that's the frame shift that actually gives you that conversation. Sorry, Vala, go ahead. Sorry, I got excited about this. Warm AI.
I love that. Right?
No. I think the question of when and where you insert a human, when and where you insert intelligent software, the when and where is important. I just think that there needs to be a standard definition of warm cold, freezing, hot. There's, the
He's got
spectrum of-
frigid AI.
no, I mean, so because until we have a common language, we'll have very varying definitions. But I think it's absolutely important maintaining humanity all along.
Yes.
But it is a new world. I mean, as a technologist, I recognize that we're not talking about tools that help humans do their jobs. We're talking about technology that does the job. And
Yes.
that is because the combinatorial factor of storage, computing, access, I mean, we're at a point where it's if you watch the movie Oppenheimer, I think one of the scientists at one point
Oppenheimer
said,
moment.
one of the scientists, I think it was Niels Bohr, who said,
Niels
when
Bohr.
we're talking about new technology, this is a new world.
Yes.
So that inflection, so you have the world-renowned scientists recognize everything changes after this. Profoundly.
Yes.
And I think this is what we're talking about. So having deeper empathy and understanding of the degrees of temperature when it comes to implementing, but also recognizing this isn't cloud, this isn't mobile, social, blockchain, 3D printing, quantum computing. This is different.
It's a
and
completely
profoundly
new.
more- yeah, right. Go
It's
ahead,
a new
please.
meta, competitive lines redrawn, changes horizontal and universal, transformation not just happening at the speed of Moore's law, but Moore's law squared. And, Satya Nadella said it so eloquently recently, this recursive era, AI having this self-improving capability. Economist Larry Summers talks about this idea that in our lifetimes, we've experienced probably 2/3 of GDP, but over the next 50 years, powered by AI and all this sort of converging, compounding, catalyzing opportunities, we could actually see 3 to 5x more global GDP. This is not just the age of disruption. This is the age of possibility, the age of wonder. And that really excites me.
Yeah.
Me too.
I mean, we're definitely seeing this new age come into place, but that also means, we've got other implications for the business, right? So where do you see AI, right? The demarcation between the internet age and now the AI age is real. We've seen that, as Vala mentioned, all those other technologies were just derivatives of the internet age. We're now into the AI age. What does that mean for business, right? You teach all these great students, you lecture across the world, right? And everyone's probably asking this question as well.
Look, I think at one level, it means elevating human brilliance, not just return on investment, but return on imagination, return on insight, return on intelligence. It's speed to insight, speed to decision-making, speed to anomalies that as a source code for innovation. But there are also challenges around that. How do we prioritize really responsible AI alongside the right guardrails? And for example, we have risks of market stability, antitrust, disinformation. But I think the big takeaway is, for me personally, it's this kind of elevation, augmentation, sharpening our growth and value agendas and crushing bureaucracy, around the world. Despite what we might think, we're at record levels of bureaucracy. I was in San Francisco, City Hall. It takes an average of 255 days to organize a first interview. I hope that AI is able to automate and elevate some of these processes that are really slowing down and holding us back from the highest levels of intelligence and maximization. In fact, I talk a lot about human maximization. And so for me, this is really a great inflection point, an exciting inflection point. And it means we need to take a step back and ask new questions to old challenges and new questions to new challenges. Will AI be the great equalizer? How do we prioritize AI alongside ethics? And will AI not just be a democratizer, but a disruptor? Some of these questions are really keeping me awake at night.
Terence, my final question to you. Please help us distinguish between a good leader and a great leader in the age of AI.
Look, I once had a boss, his nickname was the Shadow. It was terrifying. You'd be working, he'd walk into the room, a cold shiver would go down my spine. He would literally creep over and he would whisper in my ear, "What are you doing?" He thought he was coaching me. And we can all imagine, we can all sort of think of these favorite bosses in our careers: the silent assassin, the perfectionist, the interferer, the know-it-all, the invisible boss, We've all got our favorites. The truth is, most people are overmanaged and underled. Most people are overmanaged and underled. And I think, when I think about great leadership in a post-AI world, it's about decentralized, it's about truth, it's about trust, it's about context over control. And it's really about belonging, connectivity, and helping everybody achieve their boldest purpose. I was at EQT, Equity, one of the largest private equity firms in the world, alongside KKR, and they have a motto, future thinking from the start. Don't limit your challenges, challenge your limits. I love that. That's what a great leadership is all about.
Love that.
We are here with Terence Mauri, founder of the Hat Future, a global future trends think tank, and author of this new book called The Upside of Disruption, The Path to Leading and Thriving at the Unknown. So thank you so much for being on the show and, of course, sharing your wisdom and insights.
Guys.
Thank you, Terence. Thank you so much. Terrific.
Thinkers 50, baby. Here we go.
Yeah, a lot of nuggets of wisdom there. And put on your seatbelt, get your popcorn ready for this next segment. We have two legends here.
We're ready.
Mark, Abraham, and David Edelman, co-author of right now #1 new release book, #1 strategic business planning category called Personalized, Customer Strategy in the Age of AI. Mark is a senior partner at BCG and the founder of the firm's personalization business, which he built into a global team of more than 1,000 agile marketeers. They are scientists, engineers, and MarTech experts. Mark's teams have accelerated the personalization efforts for over 100 iconic brands. We'll talk about some of them in our segment, and help build AI platforms, including fabrics of personalization. Mark now leads BCG's North American marketing, sales, and pricing practice. Welcome, Mark, to DisrupTV.
Thanks for having me.
And with Mark, we have one of the OGs, truly one of the OGs here. David Edelman has a history of personalization, work spanning many decades. Today, and I don't mean anything by that other than he's very well experienced. Today, David is
He has more gray hair than me.
wisdom.
It's wisdom. No one ever trusts me. So.
Senior lecturer at Harvard Business School, an executive advisor and board member to brands and technology providers, and an advisor to BCG. Forbes has repeatedly named David as one of the top 20 most influential voices in marketing, and Ad Age has named David top 20 chief marketing and technology officers. He is a GOAT. Together with Mark, David wrote the 2022 HBR article, Customer Experience in the Age of AI, that inspired Personalized, the book we're going to be talking about. Welcome, David, to DisrupTV.
Terrific to be here, guys.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We're super excited to have you. I'm sure you're Audie's favorite. So mass personalization at scale is hot. And this is really how we're getting here. And AI is one of the ways customers actually are approaching marketing. But really, it's a way we can't imagine at a scale we can't imagine. Tell us why that is the case, because the holy grail has always been this one-to-one marketing, mass personalization at scale, the ability to actually reach customers where they're going to be, or to even actually think about their intent before they actually even think about it themselves. One of you's got to start. Dave, Mark, what do you think?
Okay. I think what's happening now is that we've gone beyond just simply using customer information for marketing. It's not just a question of creating a tailored message for an individual based on the fact that they looked at a pair of shoes before. We're now seeing, because of the AI capabilities, it's about full experiences. It's companies deciding they're going to compete based on how they use customer information to add value. And, it's a great build on the last speaker, because what we were talking about there was about warm AI versus cold AI. And I think here it's about AI that's thinking about how do we help people by unlocking information about them that they are comfortable with you using. And just think right now about brands we're using more and more. Spotify, Uber, a lot of the digital native brands, the reason people are drawn to them is because of the way your information is being used to help you. And what we cite in the book now is this is going beyond the digital natives. It's now more and more companies, B2B, financial services, healthcare, retail, all trying to think through how to mobilize that information to change the experience.
And what's exciting, I think, is the speed with which companies are doing that. We talk about in our book, digital natives obviously started this trend with Netflix and Spotify and Uber, but now every industry actually has personalization leaders in it. And that's what we had so much fun talking about in the book and talking to leaders who are doing this for the book.
And this is big business. This is good for business. You say by in the next 6 years, by 2030, leaders will capture $2 trillion. That's with a T, $2 trillion dollars in incremental growth by leveraging personalization advantage. And your personalization advantage is very deep in the book. It's not, you talk about empowering individuals, you talk about knowing individuals, you talk about reaching individuals, showing them what the promise of personalization, intelligence, speed, and scale. And then lastly, delighting all of us. And that's customer experiences that feel like magic. So you have this 5-element recipe that encompasses personalization that reaches this $2 trillion incremental growth. What is the source of this growth? Talk to us a little bit more about this incredible recipe you have under Personalized.
So one of our frustrations in talking with clients on this has been, it's really hard to measure personalization. Where do I stand? Every company is doing it, but are they really doing it, and are they doing it well? So we finally said, okay, we've got to be able to put some numbers around it. And so we came up with what we call the Personalization Index. So it's a simple score, 0 to 100, and we've scored hundreds of brands on it. And what we found was only 10% of them are really getting personalization right. I mean, think about the number of times you get those spam emails that have bad recommendations in your inbox that don't apply to you, or how many times you walked into the doctor's office and had to fill out the same form. All these companies that are not using your data well. But the 10% that are, we found they're growing 10 points faster than the laggards. So that's the source of this 2 trillion. And yes, it's trillion with a T prize. And what we see is it's higher conversion, double the conversion rates often, even in B2B industries. Like if you look at what Microsoft is doing in this space, Cisco and others, it is more frequency. Just think about all the personalization in the Starbucks app. You talked about coffee before and how many extra times it's made you go into the store in the afternoon or on the weekend, given their personalized offers. Or think about the way it's expanding entire categories. I mean, Uber itself is a great example on this. We take a lot more rides than we used to with cabs because of how they've put personalization with one of the first forms of agentic AI into our hands.
So Vala, I want to build, you rattled off very nicely, actually, what we call the 5 promises of personalization. And again, linking it back to the last speaker, if you're trying to be warm in your AI, you're thinking about your effect on your customer. You're not thinking about what to do to your customer. You're thinking about how you can help them by empowering them, knowing them, reaching them, showing them, delighting them. And so the index looks at actually each of those 5 areas. And we've gone through and we said, what are the AI technology and operational capabilities to be able to do each of them? And we don't have time to go into a lot of depth there.
Sure.
And then we said, okay, that's the capabilities. Now, what's the experience these companies deliver? And so we acted as mystery shoppers. We interviewed customers of all of these companies, and we used that to score them on the scale of 0 to 100, and then correlated that with financial measures. So I actually think one of the things this shows, just again, building, is that warm AI that is using AI to help people, especially by unlocking the value of their information, has an opportunity to dramatically expand the economy.
I love that.
Dave, it's definitely right. And I think, building on your way back, segment of one.
Oh, wow, you got that. I'm impressed.
way back. I remember that. Right.
That's
1989.
legendary work. That's legendary work.
1989, before the internet. I
Yeah.
wrote segment of one marketing. Yes.
You coined that. It won out. It's definitely something we all remember. I was working on some of the early CRM systems in the late 90s. So definitely remember that. But I would say that the most interesting thing you showed was personalization actually leads to higher revenue growth. And I thought that chart was very, very important for people to see and understand. Now, the question really comes back to, with generative AI or AI in general, those experiences are dynamic. They're changing all the time. And so how does someone put themselves in the mindset of a personalization leader? Because that's not an easy thing to describe or go to the board with. It's like, hey, we're going to go invest money in personalization. It's going to work. And they're just like, yeah, right. Go somewhere else. Right. I mean, we've seen that. How do you make the case, right, if as a CMO or chief customer officer, so that they can actually make the case for the investments that are required that are coming from the AI side?
Yeah. So in the book, we still tell the story of Starbucks. Again, since you love coffee, I'll go there. And I think what they did actually a decade ago, becoming a personalization leader, was exactly that, painting the vision of the customer experience. In their case, how do they make the digital experience as magical as the best barista interacting with a customer? And then actually understanding how to get started. Yes, there's a huge prize if they can do that. But what if you just start with making the email experience or the app experience a little bit better, getting people better offers for the coffees they want, as an example? That's how they got started, and putting together cross-functional teams. It can't just be marketing, as David said earlier. It has to be technology, analytics, and the operations team all at the table. And it can't be hundreds of people either. You need a nimble set of doers at the table, really breaking down the business as usual processes and making progress every 6 months on use cases. So bring some design thinking, really think about what challenges are you solving for customers. In that case, giving better value for the coffees you buy every day. And then paint the vision so that there is investment and the roadmap against this. So you can unlock the next stage of investment, because the reality is this is not cheap. Companies and personalization leaders have invested tens of millions of dollars. You don't have to have that much to get started, though, now. Unlike 10 years ago, you had to build everything. There are a lot of off-the-shelf solutions and point solutions you can start to use in individual channels, individual experiences. So the other point we make in the book is around smart integration. There is no one silver bullet here, but you can make the pieces of technology talk together, think through the data flows, and then really unlock cross-channel personalization, which is the holy grail now.
So Brian Nickel, give Dave Mark a call. If you're paying attention out there watching Disrupt TV, they're ready to answer your call about personalization and turn around Starbucks.
So one of the things I don't think we think enough about when we do these kinds of discussions is B2B, is the business to business world, and how to unlock this. So a client of mine is an industrial distributor focused in the construction business. And when a contractor needs something, they want to know right away, can you get it to me? How much? How fast? Now, they're calling around and they're trying to find it. But if you're a distributor who has already asked for the blueprints that somebody's working on, you know exactly specifications that they need to fit with everything else on their property. You know where it is, you know how long it's been taking them to build something. And when they call in, the agent in the distribution center can now immediately understand all kinds of information about that contractor and the project, and can answer that question with a degree of accuracy that they never had before. They can match color, exact shading. They know about the laws, the code laws in the geography. So if they're putting in roofing tile, it meets the specifications, all of that. So they decided that they just had to have their agents be the absolute best on the phone when a contractor called in. So that goes right to the top. It's not just a marketing thing.
Yeah.
That's a whole experience. And so they can make the case there by saying, we're just simply going to get more share, and they have.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And that's my experience as well at Salesforce. I have the privilege of working with incredible trailblazer CMOs and CCOs, chief customer, chief experience, chief marketing. These are line of business leaders that know they're touching the customer. And they're all the trailblazers anyway, not all. Actually, they're a small group, but growing. But they are looking to implement a pseudo model. They're trying to sense, understand, decide, and act. Sense, understand, and decide and act for those moments of truth. And then they're trying to reduce the time from sensing, like a buyer's intent or maybe a lower net promoter score, or whatever the signal is, to acting and reducing that delta T to 0. So as real time as possible, they're building their anticipatory muscles, and they're trying to apply machine power multiplier to everything that they do. That's the only way they can actually, at scale, deliver real-time value. So my question is, regarding generative AI, these folks recognize that generating content on the fly for those moments of truth helps them accelerate the sense, understand, decide, infinite loop that's happening. So can you talk to us about how Gen AI can help address the challenges when it comes to creating content? Because ultimately the output from this operating system is some information, some service, some value that can create that magical moment that you described in your 5 levers of personalization.
Yeah. So there's no doubt that Gen AI is reshaping content creation. We can and have for a couple of years now been able to create copy, translate text very, very quickly with Gen AI in seconds, what took weeks. Next, in the last 6 months, I think we've cracked the code now in image generation, things like faces and hands. Video is up next, and voice is getting better. So you're seeing content generation with prompting and the right feature engineering and the right content libraries feeding it, massively take out 80–90% of the work from initial draft content generation. Now, that doesn't mean the entire process is whittled down to seconds, because there's still approvals and compliance, and the human in the loop is very critical. Sure. So in addition to Gen AI tools, marketers also need to look at their entire end-to-end content supply chain and think about the handoffs, the number of people involved, and really rethink the entire process. We're going to see, because of this, an explosion of content, because companies are not just introducing efficiency, they're also then personalizing the content and creating 10x more content in many cases. So what's really critical is that they pair generative AI with their predictive AI and curate that content and only present you the relevant content. If you watch my TED Talk, I say less is more, and personalization leaders are abiding by the less is more mantra. So,
well, they can't handle the output of the content velocity on the other end, right? It's like, it's ridiculous,
overwhelming. And I think people are talking a lot about Gen AI in and of itself. And I think Mark's point, I just want to amplify, it's about stitching together different kinds of AI. So being able to use machine learning to analyze large sets of data to find the right trigger and the right moment to reach out to someone. Then you use Gen AI to create something, but probably you're going to test variations. And then you need AI to be able to manage the test cells and see on the back end what's worked and what hasn't. So there's a number of different AI systems that you have to stitch together. And I think people are just getting caught up in creating content, but you have to think through the whole end-to-end piece of it.
You know, and this makes a lot of sense, right? And as we see, like, all these things that are in there to kind of like manage AI and manage data, we have now privacy versus context, privacy versus personalization. It's picking up in the role How are people navigating that? Because it's so different country by country, expectation-wise. I mean, take this political campaign season. I'm getting texts all over the place. It's going nuts. People are like, stop, like in capital letters. Like, what do you do? How do you find that right balance? Because that's going to be one of the biggest questions people ask and how to navigate.
Yeah, I think one of the key things, first of all, we did a survey of thousands of different consumers around the world. 70% of people are very comfortable with companies using information about them as long as they get value out of it and they feel it's appropriate. 75% of people, though, have said they've stopped doing business, they've unsubscribed, they've turned things off when things are inappropriate. So, yeah, that it goes both ways. So it comes back to really asking yourself, are you just shoving things out the door? Are you shoving more and more and more out the door for maybe some short-term response rates? Or are you really thinking through smartly the right time, the right interaction, the less is more, as Mark said?
Or are your customers schizophrenic? So
my final question to both, how does someone start when you're advising a CMO? Maybe they're from a digital native company, maybe they're for digital immigrant companies that weren't born mobile, social, cloud, data-driven. Do you tailor, is your answer different based on the maturity level of the company, or is this like a mindset that's required regardless of where you are in your journey and what level of experience you have, so you can appreciate the power that comes from personalization?
So 3 things. Number 1, pick a use case and just get started. It doesn't have to be solving the entire customer journey, all channels. And based on maturity, different companies will pick different use cases. And some people have already started and they'll pick the next one. Usually the ideas are not the issue. We can get clients in a room across functions and immediately come up with 10 use cases that are feasible and high value. The second is really think through the data you need for that use case. Too often companies get caught up in fixing their entire data foundation and it becomes a 3-year, $100 million project that leads to nowhere. So really think about the critical data you need and how you're going to stitch it together for that use case in a minimum viable way. And then just get started. And it's probably going to mean you have to take the business as usual process and people and pull some of them out and get started in a skunkworks way to launch something and set some bold targets. It shouldn't take more than a few months to stand up a test and then scale it. And then that funds the journey for the next use cases.
Great advice.
it does. And we didn't even get to loyalty programs. How did that even happen?
Future loyalty is
Next
changing.
time.
Please come back. Please come back.
Come back next time for loyalty.
On that.
I love loyalty programs because it bypasses the cookie apocalypse, because you just subscribe for the give-get model.
Right.
But we're here with Mark Abraham, senior partner at BCG and co-author of Personalized Customer Strategies in the Age of AI, and David Edelman, senior lecturer at Harvard Business School and also co-author of the same book. They don't have X accounts. What the heck is that? Just kidding. Anyways, that's their book on Amazon. And I'm sure Adi's going to be super happy at this promotion. So say hi to Adi for us, guys. All right, take care. Thank you so much. Happy Friday, and see you in the back room.
Thank you so much.
So.
Cheers.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. Our minds are being blown, but now we've got Jon Reed in his secret bunker and residency in Las Vegas. Look at that.
Well, first of all, for those of you who may not know, Jon is a future first ballot DisrupTV Hall of Fame inductee, future, because he hasn't retired yet. We have a 2-year after retirement policy before we induct you into the Hall of Fame. Jon is the co-founder of Diginomica. He's been building enterprise communities for 30 years. He frequently writes it's articles, videocasts about enterprise software, AI, analytics, return on investment, customer experience, and success and transformation efforts. Roving blogger, definitely check out Jon at Diginomica. And he's also a strategic advisor to enterprise CXOs. Welcome, Jon. Welcome back, Jon. By the way, you can follow Jon on X at JONERP. Jon ERP. Welcome back, Jon, to DisrupTV.
Thanks, all. It's nice to take a break from my Las Vegas residency, and I'm coming blazing today, man. I'm running hot. You guys did a great job of stirring me up with the past guests, which were terrific. So I'm ready to go for the jugular. You ready?
Yeah, I'm
We
ready.
are ready. And
We're definitely ready. Can I just start with, because I know this topic is near and dear to you, I just want to read a paragraph we wrote, and then we can have Ray ask questions and get you going. But I don't mind getting you fired up. This is John's recent post, long read, must read, about agentic AI and its promise or its hype. I'm not against automation. I've already pasted companies for not stepping into process automation sooner. I'm, however, opposed to automation that doesn't have a companion narrative around how human workers can create more value and maybe even, yes, experience something personal fulfillment on the job and put some real ingenuity into it. Oh, I forgot. We're automating that also. So, and he ends with, I do find the productivity-based conversation limited, nor has increasing brute force productivity with AI proven as easy as promised. So we may have a myth buster here, although I think we can all agree that there's plenty of real tangible use cases. But anyway, I don't want to
we got to let him respond to that. We can't just let him sit here. He's got to respond. This is crazy. Go for it.
Well, listen. I mean, look. I mean, we just been presented with a very mechanistic view of the future. I think in the fall events, and not all of this is wrong. It's just that we've really lost this compelling narrative, I think, on what humans bring to the table. And just to give you one example of that. I was at a panel with a couple of esteemed experts from various analyst firms. You know, Ray and I like to take pot shots at the big analyst firms. So boom. But anyhow, they were talking about like what human skills are needed in the face of AI. And I noticed, and this is one I want to talk with you guys about this today. And by the way, I want this whole conversation to be a little bit like the ones we're going to have next week, because I want to give people a flavor for what goes down in Half Moon Bay. But the whole thing was, neither one of them mentioned creativity and ingenuity. And this came up a little bit on the show today, as if generative AI can do that shit. I'm sorry, but you can't personalize a mediocre turd. Look, some of the content created by these machines is pretty good and has use. I'm not going to say that, but human creativity and ingenuity is what created these systems in the first place. And if you study how these evolved, there's a whole bunch of brilliant people that built these things. And if we lose track of human creativity and ingenuity, I don't like our chances. So everyone's saying, oh, you need critical thinking. Fine. But you also need human creativity. So that's all I was trying to say there, is that I think we really lost a lot of the framing around this. And I understand why vendors did this fall. And they're not wrong about the impact of these technologies. But anyway.
John, part of the narrative is that in order for humans to be creative, in order for them to be bold and audacious and expand their purview by experimenting and failing, is taking the redundant, mundane bullshit tasks that they do off their plate. And as someone who ran a call center for 10 years, believe you me, 50% of what I assigned to my good men and women, and these were hundreds of service professionals around the world, 50%, as I look back, was like decision trees that had like 3 branches, like super deterministic, super contained operating model, but we couldn't automate. We couldn't task software to do it on our behalf. So these men and women, literally, some of them spent 30 years and retired doing work that frankly limited them from ever being creative.
100%.
Sorry, we can't answer your question, but would you like fries with that?
Yeah.
But John, you're right, and Vala, right? The piece here is really, we have 7 modes for thinking about automation, right? Highly repetitive, automate, right? Lots of nodes of interaction, you can't multitask. High volume, definitely want to automate. And of course, if you've got massive amounts of scale that you need to get to, right? You're going to have to leverage that. But complexity and creativity is really interesting because there are some things you can't model with math, right? And that's where human judgment comes into place. And creativity is not going to go away because you can't do that in machines yet, right? So those are like some of the questions we always ask in terms of when you actually go to automation versus AI. And Jon, you're definitely seeing that. But Jon, you were at how many conferences this week, all in Las Vegas, listening to all AI and automation and the future of X? Like, what did you get out of this? Other than there's a lot of hype.
Yeah, so let me just take a step back here because I think I want to explain briefly like the confrontation that I experienced around this technology because it was, Vala, you talked about other buzzwords before I came on, and it was a few years ago, even though I have a lot of hostility towards certain aspects of generative AI, I realized this is all different and like I'm going to have to change my career as a result of this. Like I can't treat this like a fad. I have to treat this like it's going to change everything, right? And so I took a look in the mirror and asked myself.
I really think that's, I just want to, I apologize for interrupting. This isn't metaverse. This isn't Web3.
No.
This isn't blockchain.
No,
This isn't.
not at all.
And by the way, I think blockchain will fuel AI and vice versa because in order to monetize it, you got to go lower than 1 cent fiat. Microservices will require fractional crypto to be able to power some of these agents. But anyway, that's a different conversation. This isn't any of that. And you've been on the show for 9 years talking about all of this. By the way, in another cynical but critical eye, like, come on, give me a break about this thing. And I just don't think this is it. There's difference to this. But anyway, sorry.
Right. So what happened to me then is I realized this changes everything for me. How can I stay relevant, right? And it was a deep existential question. And one of the things I looked at is the fact that a lot of the people I respect the most voices in this field have been doing AI for decades, and I haven't. So how can I be a relevant voice? I can't make up those decades. I wasn't studying AI for decades. I come at it from a totally different direction. So what do? So what I did is I said, first, I'm going to be poignantly aware of the consumer AI, the broader cultural impact, because I study creativity for decades now. And this is something that I wanted to really hit on from your show, because I think you guys missed a little bit of the full framing of these issues, because while you're right that executives are risk averse, there is a risk management component here. And I just want to point out that when you look at the cultural impact of these technologies, with chatbots running amok, vendors taking crap live before they should in order to keep market share, virtue signaling about AI safety while undermining regularizations, data colonization, a strong word, but perhaps not strong enough for some of the visual artists I know that have been put out of work by these technologies, not to mention algorithmic discrimination. And then on top of that, premature generative AI adding fuel to the fire of disinformation with a lack of shared truth and facts. And I was thinking about it the other day. I'm not sure we can have civilization without an agreed upon set of facts. I'm not sure we can, because if you have a different facts, you can't move to a different continent. There's no empty continents, folks. You can't take your different facts and move and isolate yourself.
I'm running out of states. I'm running out of states to move to, Jon.
And yet we could elect presidents based on different set of facts.
We can, but how well are we coexisting? I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
And it's really concerning. And look, generative AI didn't cause those problems, neither did AI. Sure. But it's fuel to the fire of those problems. And so if we don't take that context seriously, first of all, we're going to have major problems enjoying the bright futures your guests laid out. But secondly, we won't understand the mentality of decision makers in the enterprise. Because here's the next piece, is that there's really good news, and this is one of the other components when I looked at how I could differentiate. I was looking at things like, okay, I want to look at real world project outcomes and really study this stuff and approach it with an open mind. And Vala, to your point, I found some impactful projects out there for sure. But then the other thing I said is I want to become a real AI geek this year and really do deep dives into these responsible AI architectures. And what I think when you do that, what you find is that enterprises are approaching this radically different than your experiences on Gemini and what you're doing on ChatGPT. And they're doing it in a much more controlled way that is about getting precise, responsible results that have integrity to privacy and security and all of that stuff. And if you don't understand why that's different and how it's different and how knowledge graphs come into play and what RAG is and all of that stuff. If you don't understand those things, then you can't possibly understand what makes enterprise AI different. So that was another component. But then there's a final component, which I think a lot of enterprise people are not aware of, that I spend a lot of time studying, and I walk around with my headphones on listening to all these scientists, and I listen to these people like Jan LeCun and Yoshua Bengio, who were part of building generative AI, and they won Turing Awards for this. These folks are not satisfied with what we consider cutting edge AI at all. One of them is referred to, I think, RAG as a band-aid. The point is they see significant underlying problems with technology, and they each have different, really interesting ways they're going about to try to change these paradigms. So when the change comes, Vala, when we finally go from, because we're not at job automation yet, I would disagree with that. We're at process automation. We've moved from task automation to process automation. To get to job automation requires a different level of true intelligence. And that's what a lot of these really geeky scientists are working on. But these are not mostly working for the vendors in the enterprise software space, because the vendors are working on monetization of short-term technology, not taking that big picture look. So what I decided is maybe I could pull all this crap together and maybe be different. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Hey, John, you're going to talk more.
I'm not a futurist, Ray is, but I will tell you, if I had to guess, I would say tasks, jobs, teams, lines of business, all subject to automation in the next 10 years. And I can name companies right now that have removed entire line of business, and these are billion-dollar revenue plus companies.
But don't make the mistake of thinking that the domino effect is going to take over all those jobs in their companies, because they're all vulnerable pockets where it will happen. But the point
absolutely.
is,
I'm an optimist. I think more net new jobs will be created. But there are certain tasks that will disappear.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's important to realize that even the journey from task to process automation is a major step forward, and that's really where we're mostly at now. And that is a significant development. Now it's good that it's going to take a while before we get to job automation for the most part. Now look, some people have already lost their jobs because of technology, especially repetitive jobs, of course. But we need some time to get to job automation so we can figure this shit out.
Say the pace of adoption, when 100 million people are on it in 59 days, when 2 billion people are now actively using generative AI. This isn't a comparison to when this guy came out in 2007, or when Meta came out in 2004, or when Salesforce came out in 1999, cloud, mobile, social revolution. Nothing has had the adoption curve of this. So the bring your own device revolution that happened with this is not 1/10 the adoption curve of the technology we're talking about.
But when I go and have lunch with customers at shows and stuff, a lot of the customers, not the flagship customers, but the ones in the trenches, they're struggling with a lot of real world issues, and they're still trying to make sense of very basic things. Now, all of this will happen, but the time frame does matter, Vala, because it impacts how you plan for this, and it impacts the decisions you make, and that's all it is.
So, John, and I would put it this way: at the conference next week in Half Moon Bay, we're going to move out of the conversation on agentic and talk about active inference and other types of AI that are evolving. You'll get to see that. But the other interesting thing is, most people don't want 1 + 1 to equal to 99.7% of the time. And so when you're trying to solve a deterministic problem with a probabilistic model, that's the problem. And so we're doing that. We're putting Gen AI as the wrong tool for a lot of different solutions, which is why you're seeing this. And RAG and model drift and all that stuff shouldn't be happening, because deterministic problems should be solved with ML, not Gen AI. And that's why we're having this bizarre shift where it's like, we're using AI. I'm like, dude, how are you using AI? You don't even know what this stuff does.
I think it's too soon to have the conversation shift away from what it means for software not to help you do the job, but the software does the job. And it's happening. Look, I was in a room 2 days ago. Jensen Wang says, you know who my advisors are? And I know he's the leader of NVIDIA, one of the most valuable companies on earth, so he has to be the biggest advocate for AI. He uses a combination of large and small public and private language models to help him with software development, hardware development, and manufacturing. He says, I've got 3 class of advisors. These aren't his direct reports. These aren't his biological humans.
But Vala, these are probabilistic technologies. They have an accuracy issue that involves use case tolerance. A lot of use cases can't tolerate inaccuracies. So these are fundamental issues that affect how you think about this. And unfortunately, we're almost out of time. But what I want to say is that I think what's super interesting about this is that it all comes back to the urgency of these discussions on a community level. And this is why what you're doing next week is so important, Ray, because like you and I have our differences, Vala, you and I have our differences. We could have a much longer conversation about this. But the point is, the point is, we're gonna gather together and talk about these problems and try to solve them. And to me, that's what I find truly inspiring, is to create communities of peers that really tackle this and try to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to be successful, not just monetization, but how we're going to be successful in a deep human way that energizes and fulfills while managing the risks. That's what I'm interested in.
We're going to talk more about that in Half Moon Bay, and we're also doing the AI Forum March 6th at the Quad Conference Center in Menlo Park. We're with Jon Reed, co-founder at Diginomica, and of course, an independent thinker and critical thinker at best. So just kidding. Follow at Exit, John ERP. We're going to see you next week, leading some cosmic conversations. So thank you so much, John. Always.
Thank you, John. Thank you. One of the things,
see you in the green room.
One of the things I love about John, every time he comes on the show, not just this segment, first of all, he deeply understands the ripple effect, the externalities that come to fruition, given a technology or a business model or leadership principle. But he reminds us that you can have a sense of belonging. You could feel like you belong to a company. You can feel like you belong to a team, but sense of belonging doesn't automatically equate to sense of mattering.
No.
You want to feel like you belong and you want to feel like you matter. So John opened up to us in a very vulnerable way at the beginning of the segment, saying, I felt I don't know enough about AI, so I'm going to spend the next 12 months to deeply understand the cultural, the ethical, the moral challenges, dilemmas, opportunities that come about. But we didn't have enough time to ask him. But I think he's motivated by doing that because he doesn't want to just belong to something. He wants to matter, and he wants the people that come to him for advice to also feel a sense of belonging and mattering. So he's a deeply rooted professional, and he's deliberate about ensuring that he guides people to a better place. And I appreciate that. And this is why he myth busts. This is why he always looks for use cases that are real, because he feels a sense of responsibility to be a supportive truth teller and do it in a meaningful, graceful way. So he's one of
the last real enterprise journalists. So no show next week, but who do we have coming in for episode number?
Yeah, we have no show next week. So next time you're going to hear from Ray and I, and our guest is November 8th, which will be episode 381. We have Christy Papworth, author of Compassionate Leadership. Folks, we're going to cross 100 authors on our show this year. Mark my word. And we have Raveen Josephson and Tanuj Kaparashami, co-authors of the Skills-Powered Organization, The Journey to the Next Generation Enterprise. So 3 authors. Next week, we had 3 authors. This week, we had 2 authors. Last week, if you're writing best-selling books, this is where you come to talk about it. So thank you so much for recommending some of these authors. Thank you for helping us expand our minds. If it's Friday, it's DisrupTV, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
See you in 2 weeks, everyone.